Welcome to Insider's Playbook from Senior Tennis Unpacked. This series is all about bringing you insider strategies and practical tips from the best coaches, fitness experts, and players in the game, so we can all keep improving at any age. I'm your host, Mike Rogers, and I'm a senior tennis player on my own journey to improve my league and tournament play. Today, I'm excited to explore how our minds change as we age and what that means for tennis performance. Our guest, Noah Phillips, is a cognitive science PhD candidate and founder of Apex Cognition. He helps competitive tennis players strengthen their mental game using cutting-edge research in psychology and performance science. Noah's unique approach blends research with his own competitive experience, giving players insights into staying sharp, adaptive, and resilient at every stage of life. In this episode, we'll explore what science tells us about the aging brain and how senior players can use that knowledge to keep improving. Noah, welcome to Insider's Playbook.
Thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump right into it. You know, what I'd like to know is really what are the most important cognitive changes that affect older athletes like myself?
For sure. Yeah, so, whether it comes to being on the tennis court or everyday life, there's a lot of similarities, right? So, some memory issues, maybe some reaction time type issues, processing speed, those type of things. As we age, those might naturally decline a little bit. But I think what's more important than those things, really, especially when it comes to tennis performance, is the wisdom that you get from experience, right? So across a lot of disciplines, what we see in practice is that, yeah, those things like the reaction time, the processing speed, those advantages can definitely be useful for the younger players. But again, in practice, almost always what outweighs those things is just the value of experience. More time, more wisdom, more experience with the thing, more practice, more skill built up of actually performing. That almost always counteracts any of those those little detriments that you get from naturally things that fall off with age. So I think that's a really promising sign for people, is that no matter what your age is, you're not too far gone. You're not losing something permanent. You can always sort of make up for it in other sorts of areas.
So I don't need to take focus factor, and I can rely on some of my past experiences to just come through, huh?
I think so. Yeah, you build your own. You've already had the focus. You've already had the experience. It's all in there, and now you can kind of consolidate it into mental frameworks that help you make decisions faster. Not because you are processing things faster, but you've already processed so much just from your experience competing for so long.
Well, how does aging, impact my focus and memory? I know memory is the thing we all say, oh, I'm losing my memory. I can't, I play a long point and I can't remember what the score is after. So, how does that also affect our decision-making on the court as we age?
Definitely. The way I would tackle that is really trying to look at what are the biggest things that knock people out of focus, right? And what I would say is probably the most common thing is emotional reactions, right? So something bad happens, you make a mistake, setback happens, maybe it's not even within your control, and you have sort of an emotional reaction to that. You start to spiral. That's when you lose focus, get knocked out of the zone, and can really find it hard to get back to a state of high performance, right? And what I think, again, is a huge advantage of having more wisdom experience that often comes from, being an older athlete when you've been playing for longer, or even just, general life experience that you've built up, is a sort of a better sense of emotional regulation, being able to control those moments and not react super emotionally, react negatively to those situations. And so I think that is sort of one of the best ways to keep focus is preventing yourself from losing it in the first place, from having these negative emotional reactions.
Kind of just letting it go, realizing, hey, that's a mistake. I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world.
Exactly. It's not the end of the
Next
world.
point.
Next point. You can always move on to the next thing. And, it's like the memory of a goldfish. What just happened, you can experience it, but then don't dwell on it. Know that what comes forward after that, everything is starting fresh and new point. Everything is, can get better from there.
So that's taking it one road down is, things that we might lose as we age and focus. But with our age, what takes us the other direction? What can makes us stronger with our mental strength.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I was kind of alluding to a bit, I think the best way to think about this is really consolidating your experiences that you've had throughout your career. Almost subconsciously, you're creating these mental frameworks. You've been here before, you've seen the thing, you've had the experience. And so you're not sort of on the fly trying to derive a new solution to the problem because you've been there before. You've had that decision making already. You've been through the process of trying to figure out what works, not just generally, but even for you specifically. And so you're more in tune with yourself, the things that work best for you, and ultimately that's where that balance comes in. Of you're not necessarily reacting faster, but there's less price of it's not as difficult to make the reaction because so much of that skill is being offloaded onto your previous experiences. And so really it can even out, and in fact even weigh in the favor of the older athlete, as it's really the decision making processes and again the overall emotional regulation, staying focused. Those are some of the advantages that I think ultimately are more important than just like the raw reaction time or memory.
So, how do our emotions play into all of this? Because I know sometimes our emotions could override what we know is, what we should be doing.
Yeah, definitely.
How do we work with that?
Yeah. So that's ultimately, this is one of the things I talk the most about, honestly, with the people I work with, is being able to foster what we call non-judgmental awareness. So like if you've ever read the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, the
Mhm.
idea of non-judgmental awareness, being able to almost step outside yourself and look at the situation objectively and understand something happened, good or bad, whatever that initial reaction might be, really take a step back and think, well, okay, if I wasn't tying any good or bad associations to this thing that happened, objectively, how could I use this as a data point to help me grow? How can I take this information as sort of this objective data, and how do I adapt and move forward from it and let my experiences guide me forward in a way that I'm not judging myself for making a mistake, right? I know
Yeah.
that I'm just a human and humans are going to make mistakes, and not criticizing yourself, not, having negative self-talk, trying to punish yourself for making mistakes, but understanding that, it's part of the process. And
Mhm.
so that a level of emotional maturity and understanding of sort of the overall process, again, I think is one of the biggest benefits of that you get from experience, and the wisdom of that experience. And so again, when it comes to emotional regulation, I think just having that experience, having that both in game and in life experience, helps you stay grounded, not default to negative self-talk or emotional reactions to things. And I think that's where ultimately it plays in, as far as being able to stay focused on the route forward, right?
Right.
Use your experiences as fuel for growth, not something to punish yourself over.
Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned being non-judgmental, and it kind of reminds me of a saying from a story, and this guy came up to this guy who had things happen to him all the time, and his
Right.
answer to everything was good thing, bad thing, who knows?
Yeah,
So,
the
because you never know, it could be a bad thing, and when it happens, but it turns out to be a good thing.
exactly.
So,
I think this is like the Chinese farmer parable or something.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that story.
So that's what that kind of reminds me. So when I miss
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
shot, hey, it could be a good thing because maybe he's upset about something now.
Yeah, you break your leg, and maybe in the moment it's like, "Oh, this is the worst thing that happened to me." But then the conscription officers come into town, and then they round people up for military service, and then they don't pick you
Yeah,
because you have a broken leg. It's like, "Oh, well, that's
yeah,
awesome." And then it's like, "Well, it depends.
yeah.
Maybe. We'll see what happens next."
Who
So,
knows?
yeah,
So let me ask you: Are there skills that we could do, mental skills that we can do, that we can use to kind of train our mind at this stage to maybe be non-judgmental?
definitely. Yeah, and
Because
that's
it's
one of the main
easier
things
said than done when you're in the heat of the moment.
what's that?
I said it's easier said than done than when you're in the heat of the moment.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why the biggest thing that I try and teach people is you want to have tools, strategies, routines, put in place, before you step on the court. You want to have those things built up that you're ready to fall back on when you encounter those situations where, a setback happens, you made a mistake, and you start to sort of veer down that emotional spiral. Again, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to figure everything out for the first time in the moment on the court. And so
Hmm.
that's what I teach people is a series of sort of tools, like actionable strategies that you can actually implement. You can design them to be useful for yourself and then have them ready to go so that when the moment comes up, um, you know what to do and you're not sort of figuring it out on the fly. So yeah, I'd be happy to walk through something like that if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you kind of show me how you maybe work with some players and do something like this? It sounds like you're, in advance preparing all these scenarios so that you know exactly what to do when it hits.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So for instance, one strategy that, on the topic of the non-judgmental awareness, one thing that I teach people, I call it the no judgment reframe, for example. So this is like we were just talking about, it's a strategy to be able to identify when something happens, a setback. Uh, it's sort of a structured path to look at it objectively and glean some insight from it that helps guide us forward rather than, go down an emotional spiral. So the formula for it, I call it TPAL. I have a little like mascot character guy that he's, your tennis pal.
Yeah,
Um,
there we go.
so TPAL is the acronym. So the first step is the trigger. So you want to identify what the thing was that happened that triggered the emotional response in you. Because, of course, building the awareness, the self-awareness of noticing these patterns is always going to be the first step to affecting change in them. So step one, identify the trigger that caused the emotional response. Step two, P, is just pause. So again, sort of step outside yourself and look at the situation objectively. If this thing that happened, if you didn't rush to assign a good or a bad value to it, what does this really mean? Why did this really happen? And, once we look at it objectively, then that's where we can move forward into the A is assess. So now we're thinking, all right, this thing happened, but like, what does it really mean? Why did it happen? And more importantly, eventually, how can you stop it from happening again? And how can it overall guide your trajectory long term, which goes into the L, learn.
Mhm.
You want to learn from the experience, not just have things happen to you passively, but actually use them as the learning experiences that help you adapt and guide yourself forward. So that's TPAL. So the trigger happens, you pause, take a breath, take space, and then you assess what it really means, and then you use that to learn something and guide yourself as we move forward. So that's an example of like a structured little mnemonic that you can remember when something happens in the match, when you start to feel that the emotional response come up. Take a pause, breath, and think about it objectively in a way that rather than an emotional response that takes you out of the match, use it as something that propels you further into the match.
That's very cool. I think I could probably use TPAL outside of tennis as well for certain things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest things that I hear from people is like, they always say, wow, I came into this trying to work on my tennis game, but I never realized how much I end up using the tools outside of the game just in everyday life, because it really is a fundamental perspective on life, right? And
Right.
a lot of people have so much internalized self-judgment built up, right? Just through our experiences in life. And a lot of people, they're not used to hearing the idea that they are good enough as just who they are, and making mistakes, that's part of being human, and we shouldn't judge ourselves for that. And in fact, if we do judge ourselves, that only inhibits our growth long term. So it
Right.
really is a on and off the court perspective shift that I think helps people a lot, even in ways that they never expected.
Might help me get to the next level that I'm looking to get to too.
I think so too. Yeah.
Well, no, this has been fantastic. Anything else you'd like to add before?
Um, well, I guess on that topic, if you're interested in learning some more of these tools,
That
I
was my
do.
next question.
Yeah. I so I post a lot of content on my Instagram, which you can just find me by searching up Apex Cognition on Instagram. So I post a lot of I post daily content on little mindset tips or things like that. And then, ultimately, if you really want to take that next step, I do offer one-to-one coaching with people. So you can always just, send me a message on Instagram, or I do have a coaching application too. I think you can put that as a link in the description.
Yeah, I was gonna. I'll have the links to your website, to that, everything, so that people can reach out to you as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you're interested, feel free to check those out. Otherwise, if you just want to give me a follow on social media and keep tabs on some of the stuff that I post, then you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Well, fantastic. No, I really appreciate you talking with us today, and I'm sure this is going to help a lot of us senior players out there. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Awesome. Yeah, I really hope it does help as many people as possible. And it really is my pleasure to talk with you here.
All right, thank you.
All
That's
right.
it for Insider's Playbook today, and we'll see you on the next show.